an ontology, epistemology, meta-framework of agency and worldviews. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and fellow inquirers, today I would like to present a unified framework for understanding one of the most ancient and persistent questions in philosophy: what is human action? And what does it mean to say that a human being is free? This is not only a philosophical question, it is one that reaches deeply into theology, science, ethics, psychology, metaphysics, and the emerging field of artificial intelligence. In every age and in every intellectual tradition, the question returns, and despite centuries of debate, three positions continue to dominate discussions. One, the doctrine that human beings possess libertarian freedom. Two, the doctrine that freedom is compatible with causal determination. Three, and the doctrine that determinism is true and human freedom is an illusion. Each of these presents itself as the final answer, yet none sufficiently accounts for the full spectrum of human experience or the complexities introduced by contemporary science. I shall argue today that the difficulty arises not from lack of insight, but from a lack of structure. We have been attempting to classify human agency using binary categories that admit only yes or no, cause or no cause, freedom or necessity, knowledge or ignorance. Human experience, however, is not binary. Causation is often partial, probabilistic, or layered. Knowledge is often incomplete, uncertain, or indirect. And human freedom seems to be something that resists simple categorization into either absolute independence or absolute determinism. Therefore, what we need is a graded logical structure, one that captures the degrees of causal influence and degrees of epistemic access that shape an act. This lecture introduces such a structure and shows how it clarifies not only human action but also the nature of competing worldviews, from naturalism to classical theism, and from deism to mysticism. Part 1. A new structure for agency. Let us begin with the simplest question: what exactly is required for an action to be free? Traditionally, we imagine a single axis. Either an act is determined by prior causes or it is not. Similarly, either the agent knows why they acted or they do not. But these axes are far richer than such yes or no distinctions allow. 1. The first axis, the degree of causal determination. The first axis concerns the degree to which an act is shaped by prior causes. This is an ontological question. It concerns the structure of reality itself. Are acts completely undetermined? Are they influenced but not compelled, or do they follow necessarily from preceding conditions? To capture this, we divide causal determination into three levels. No causal determination at all, partial or probabilistic causal influence, complete and deterministic causal control. This is a scale rather than a binary alternative. 2. The second axis, the degree of knowledge about causes. The second axis concerns how much the agent knows or understands about the causes that shape their action. This is an epistemological question. It concerns introspection, self-awareness, and rational analysis. Again, we distinguish three modes: no knowledge of the relevant causes, partial or incomplete knowledge, complete knowledge, or complete transparency of the causal structure. These are epistemic categories, not ontological ones. They concern the agent's access, not the world's structure. 3. Combining the two axes. When we combine 3 degrees of causal determination, 3 degrees of epistemic awareness, we obtain 9 logically coherent positions, each representing a distinct doctrine of human action. These include the classical doctrines, but also 6 overlooked positions, which have not traditionally been named, but are nevertheless rigorous and philosophically meaningful. It is these 9 positions that form the heart of our framework. Part 2. How the 3 traditional doctrines appear within this framework. Before introducing all 9 positions, it is helpful to locate the familiar ones. 1. Libertarian freedom. In libertarian freedom, the act is not shaped by any determining cause, and the agent has no knowledge of causal determination precisely because none exists. This corresponds to the position where causal determination is at its lowest, and knowledge of causal structure is also at its lowest. Libertarian freedom holds that an action originates solely in the agent. 2. Compatibilism. Compatibilism lies at the center of our matrix. In compatibilism, the act is shaped, influenced, or biased by prior conditions, yet it is not compelled by them, and the agent has partial but not complete understanding of these influences. This position reflects the intuition shared by many philosophers, psychologists, and neuroscientists that human beings act within a network of influences but not under necessity, and that they have partial introspective access to these influences. 3. Determinism. In determinism, the act is entirely and necessarily determined by prior causes, and causes are completely transparent or knowable to an ideal observer. This is the classical picture associated with the image of Laplace's intellect, an infinite intelligence that, knowing all forces and all positions, could predict all future states of the universe. Thus, determinism occupies the maximal position on both axes. Part 3. The 6 overlooked positions. The 9-cell structure reveals 6 positions that have been largely ignored by traditional philosophy. Let me briefly introduce them. 1. Weak chaos. Here the agent has no determining cause, yet has some partial knowledge or intuition about their act. This corresponds to situations in which the agent forms impressions or anticipations without underlying deterministic structure. 2. Chaotic scientism. Here there is no determining cause, but complete epistemic transparency is claimed. This is the view that everything is fully understood or knowable even when causal determination is denied. 3. Soft libertarianism. Here, some causal influence exists, but the agent is completely unaware of it. This reflects many psychological models of unconscious bias and hidden motives. 4. Probabilistic scientism. Here the act is shaped by probabilistic causes, and the agent has full knowledge of those causes. This closely resembles certain scientific views of human behavior. 5. Instrumental determinism. Here, the act is fully determined by prior causes, yet the agent has only partial knowledge of them. This position is extremely important because it turns out to be the logical home of many classical theological systems, including the dominant strands of Christian theism. 6. Fatalism. Here the act is determined, but the agent has no knowledge of the determining cause. This resembles ancient tragic conceptions of destiny, as well as modern existential depictions of opaque determinism. Part 4. The Agency Uncertainty Principle. Having introduced the 9 positions, I now present a unifying insight. Freedom and self-knowledge cannot both be maximized. To express this formally without symbols, let me put it as follows. The more an agent understands the causal origins of an act, the less that act can be described as originating solely within the agent. Conversely, acts that feel internally sovereign and self-generated are precisely those for which we cannot give detailed causal explanations. The principle is analogous to the uncertainty relation in quantum mechanics, although applied to agency rather than physical measurement. This principle explains why deep introspection reduces the sense of sovereign freedom, and strong feelings of sovereign spontaneity arise when explanation is lacking. It governs the entire matrix of agency. Part 5. The parallel matrix of worldviews. We now extend the structure beyond human action to encompass metaphysical worldviews. We introduce a second matrix constructed from 2 axes. 1. The degree to which the world is correlated with a divine or fundamental reality. 2. And the degree to which that correlation can be known. This matrix includes naturalism, deism, classical theism, pantheism, mysticism, and symbolic religion. For instance, naturalism occupies the position where the world is fully correlated with itself and fully knowable through intersubjective inquiry. Classical theism occupies the position where the world is fully correlated with the divine cause, but only partially knowable. Mysticism occupies positions where correlation is assumed or felt, but knowledge is either minimal or subjective. Part 6. The first isomorphism, agency, and worldviews. Here we arrive at the lecture's major discovery. The structure of human agency corresponds exactly to the structure of worldviews. Specifically, every position on the agency matrix corresponds to a position on the worldview matrix. And every worldview implies a certain structure of human agency. For example, naturalism corresponds to deterministic agency with full transparency. Mysticism corresponds to undetermined or wholly determined actions with no knowledge of their cause. Classical theism corresponds to full ontological causation and partial epistemic knowledge. This is a one-to-one correspondence between two logical domains. Part 7, the second isomorphism, theology and science. The second discovery is that the two matrices reveal the structural relationships between naturalism, classical theism, deism, pantheism, scientism, and mysticism. Consider classical theism. Classical theism asserts 1. That God is the complete cause of all things. 2. That human beings possess freedom. 3. And that human beings have only partial knowledge of God's causal involvement. But when we map these assertions into the formal structure, we find a worldview in which reality is fully caused by a divine agent, and human beings only partially understand this causation, corresponds to the agency position of full determination with partial knowledge. This is the position of instrumental determinism, not libertarian freedom. Thus, the framework reveals that classical theism is structurally deterministic and cannot coherently sustain libertarian freedom. This conclusion is not rhetorical, but strictly logical. Part 8, Applications. The framework has profound implications for philosophy of mind, neuroscience, theology, metaphysics, AI research, and the science-religion debate. Let me mention a few. 1. Cognitive science. The structure maps precisely to empirical findings about unconscious influence, biased decision-making, introspective opacity. 2. Neuroscience. Neural activity often precedes conscious awareness of choice by measurable intervals, aligning with the positions of soft libertarianism or instrumental determinism. 3. Theology. The structure unmasks the hidden determinism embedded in classical doctrines of providence and grace and clarifies debates about predestination, human responsibility, divine foreknowledge. 4. AI agency modeling. Artificial intelligence agents often operate under probabilistic causes with full system-level transparency. This places them squarely in the position of probabilistic scientism. 5. Philosophy of science. Naturalism occupies the position corresponding to full determination and full transparency. This clarifies why naturalism and classical theism repeatedly conflict. They occupy incompatible positions on the worldview matrix. Part 9, Closing Reflections. We have achieved the following today. 1. A two-axis graded model of action. 2. A 9-cell taxonomy of human agency. 3. A 9-cell taxonomy of metaphysical worldviews. 4. A principle that unifies freedom and knowledge. 5. A structural correspondence between agency and worldviews. 6. An explanation for long-standing theological and philosophical conflicts. 7. A framework for interdisciplinary dialogue. The world is not binary, and neither is human agency. Causation is layered. Knowledge is partial. Freedom is not an absolute condition, but a structured position within a multidimensional matrix. The deepest philosophical conflicts arise not from incompatible truths, but from misalignment of structural positions. Once those structures are made explicit, confusion dissolves and the dialogue can proceed with clarity. Thank you.